It's the word of God for us, the people of God, and we say, thanks be to God. It's helpful if I push the clicker. Like, why isn't it going? Because I'm supposed to do that. Hey, look at that. So we continue our series on the Beatitudes. This one's kind of a toughie. It's a toughie because we all get put into these situations. We tell stories, and stories have been created by many different cultures and many different places. This is not a Christian lesson exclusively. If you look at your psalm this morning, Psalm 37, you will see where Jesus has highlighted a repetitive theme. Wait patiently for God. Do not fret over those who prosper in their way, who carry out evil devices. Now, you're supposed to be angry about this, and you should be angry about this. I get angry about this. And Scripture reminds us, refrain from anger and forsake wrath. Do not fret, it only leads to evil. For the wicked shall be cut off, and those who wait for the Lord shall inherit the land. And yet a little while the wicked will be no more. Though you should look diligently for their place, they will not be there, but the meek shall inherit the land and delight themselves in abundant prosperity. Jesus is just quoting. The children's lesson is a pretty simple one, but it is on point. When you have power and you choose to use it, be very careful. Because there are consequences when you use your power. We all have power. If you have money, you have power. If you have a vote, you have power. If you have a say-so in what goes on in your house, unlike me, you have power. Power is a very powerful thing. It's an incredibly dangerous thing. The number one thing we fuss at my 8-year-old for is because she loves to take over the 5-year-old. And the 5-year-old doesn't like it. So the 5-year-old gets very angry. And sometimes the 5-year-old will turn around and smack the 8-year-old. And I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for the 8-year-old at a certain point, because I'm like, if you've pushed this kid to the point that you didn't listen, he's trying to tell you he doesn't like it. Now, I'm not endorsing him smacking, but at a certain point as a parent, I'm like, look, if you're going to use your huge power and you're not going to listen to what he has to say, don't expect him to just roll over. He also has power too, and one day he's going to be bigger than you, and the roles are going to be very much reversed. As a parent, you know you have power. How you wield that power is one of the great struggles in the lack of a manual. How much power do you wield? What do you let them get away with that they think they're getting away with? In a relationship with another person, you wield power because you know what they're vulnerable. You know what hurts them. And if you want to, you can pull that out. Doesn't matter if they're your friend or your coworker. You can pull that out anytime you want because you've got power. It's one of the struggles that we have as a culture. We, as the United States of America, are very powerful, aren't we? And how many times have we used our power and it's blown up in our face? A lot. And how many times do we not wield our power when we think we should? It's the great struggle in having power. When do you wield it? How much do you wield it? Every situation is different. It's difficult. But there's a certain way of wielding power that starts hurting other people. It starts becoming something that you grow because someone else loses. If we go back to the captivity where they were all in Egypt, and after God had gave them a way out, and they crossed the Red Sea and they were into the desert. Remember, they lost their heritage, they lost their rules, they lost a lot of the things, and so Moses is out in the desert trying to figure this out. How do we build something where there is more balance, where Pharaoh doesn't hold all the cards? And that's the book of Leviticus. It's the boring book, because who wants to read about you got to eat this crab and not eat that crab, and on the third moon of the fifth Sunday of the fourth solstice, there's all these rules. Who likes rules? No one likes rules because other people tell you what to do and take away your power, right? Why do you stop at a stop sign? Because you don't have power. Stop sign has power. You don't. What happens when you blow through the stop sign? The one that is more powerful than you has cute lights and pulls you over. It's the idea of the law. The law is the thing that attempts, keyword, attempts to neutralize those people that choose to hurt other people. But Pastor, we have a law that says you can't use guns in school and yet kids die. Yes, and that tells you exactly what Paul tells you. The law can't save you. The law can't. The law is an attempt to get you to think, to get me to think of the time and the place to wield my power. Kid almost ran in front of my car yesterday when we were at the YMCA. It's a very powerful car. I hit that accelerator, it's going. I barely pushed the gas. Doc was next to me. She's like, kid. They're darting, running. It reminded me that when you're behind the wheel of a car, you wield a lot of power. And if I want to wield that power how I want, sooner or later, someone's going to get what? Hurt or dead. It's a very simplistic example, but it doesn't matter if you're behind the wheel of a car or the wheel of a company. Whether you're behind the wheel of a car or the head of your household. Behind the wheel of a car or the head of your bank account. You slam the accelerator down hard enough, and sooner or later, someone's going to get hurt. And so the people that Jesus is talking to are Galilean. Remember, the Galileans, they're not Jews and they're not Romans. They're the ones who are getting run over. They don't really belong to anything. And Jesus is reminding them that the meek will inherit the earth, reminding them of Leviticus, reminding them that there is an order to which they're supposed to be thinking about. And the reason why Jesus says, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth, it's because it's the idea of the return to land. You see, what happens was everyone got a cut of the land. And after so many years, perhaps your land got a lot of rainwater. And perhaps the guys next to you didn't. Well, if you don't have enough money for food, you're going to have to figure out a way to do it. So if you own land, you're going to have to put a mortgage up against it to buy food. And if this happens so many years where rain doesn't fall over here and rain continues to fall over here, and nobody wants to forgive this mortgage, well, sooner or later you kick the people off the land. And now this guy, because the rain fell on his side, he now owns both pieces of land. And now he's got twice as much money. And so he goes to the person who's, they tried to have some crops, but the locusts ate their crops. And then he goes and puts a mortgage on their property. And now he owns 1, 2, 3. And after about 4 generations of this, one guy owns what? Everything. And so there is a reset. No, you don't own all the land, and no, because you got lucky, you don't get to win everything. There was a reset where the land would be returned to the ancestors so everyone got an opportunity to reestablish themselves. And some of you say, well, that's not fair. I worked hard for whatever. Yeah, we do. But to deny that there is chance and luck and a little bit of opportunity doesn't quite mesh. Because if along the way you had to step on lots of little people and take advantage of them, I don't think that was the point of the game, which is the point of Leviticus, to pay attention to how things are supposed to be in balance. If you have high blood pressure, you know that your meals are supposed to be in balance. I'm not supposed to have all of those wonderful, salty New Orleans foods. I'm going to be eating a lot of salad this week because I decided to eat a lot of salt this weekend. So I have to restore balance. I'd love to eat donuts every day for breakfast. I would look like a donut. There's the idea of a well-balanced breakfast. You're supposed to not eat all grains. You're supposed to have a little... There's this idea that our bodies work on balance, and it's because that's how nature's supposed to work on balance. Good luck trying to breathe oxygen if we cut down all the trees. No, I'm not some hippie who wants all the trees to grow everywhere. No, I like oxygen. You know what provides me oxygen? Trees. I like to breathe. I'm cutting down a tree in my backyard. My kids are mourning over it. I'm like, trust me, we will plant some more trees. But there's a balance. There's a return of the land, a return to balance, an idea of creating order from disorder. The meek are the ones who are sitting underneath the foot of someone's boot. And I like this phrase because I don't remember where exactly it came from, but it was uttered to me very, very strongly in my ethics classes. Because it's true. It was articulated none better than when I really started looking at economics, and it's true. Someone always pays the price. You want to know why your iPhone isn't $5,000? It's because we're paying some kid $2 an hour to mine it in some third world country. That's the truth. Well, I have an Android. It's the same thing. You want to know why our oil's so cheap? Because somebody else is paying the price for it. Someone always pays the price for it. We just don't see it. If we don't see it, it's not our problem. We're okay. We're fine. I hate it going to the grocery store and looking at eggs on sale for 25 cents. Happens every so often. I don't know how it happens because I know exactly how much it costs each one of those hens to produce one of those eggs. Because I've wanted chickens forever, and I know exactly how much one of those eggs cost in feed. It's more than 25 cents a dozen. I promise you that. And it makes me think, if I'm getting it for 25 cents, who is paying the difference? Somebody's paying the difference. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Somebody had to grow the food. Somebody had to cook the food. Somebody had to bring it to you. There's only so many times when wielding power is a healthy thing. And no, this isn't a bash on us being Americans or being very wealthy. All of us are in the top 1%. If you're in this room and you own an automobile, you're in the top 1%. No, I'm not. Not in this country. No, you're not. But in the world, yes, you are. We're not riding around on scooters to get to church. We're not walking. We own automobiles. We're some of the wealthiest people on this planet. It's why I appreciate the idea of doing laundry or single moms. I enjoyed a very nice meal with very nice service this weekend. I didn't have to think about it. I just slapped the credit card on the table. Why? Because I could pay for it, not think about it. I also appreciate the backlash against Wendy's dynamic pricing, if you haven't heard about that bad boy. Because I remember the days when I only had $5 in my pocket. And if I wanted lunch, I want to know exactly, if I get to that Wendy's, that for $4.25, I know I could get these 3 items and I could walk out and I know I could eat. If I got all the way to Wendy's and I found out that my two cheeseburger meal that cost me $4.25 is now $12. How much power are you going to wield? How much more can you take? They quickly backtrack. No, that's not what we meant. As my friend so eloquently said, if Chick-fil-A's not doing dynamic pricing, Wendy's has no business thinking about it. If anybody should be doing dynamic pricing, it's Chick-fil-A, who still closes on Sundays, who chooses not to wield their power in some places. Anybody ever heard of this? It's a very rare thing. No? Good. Because it's very nerdy. Very, very nerdy. One of the basic laws of science is that you cannot create matter. Is that correct? Matter cannot be created or destroyed, right? Which means it can only be exchanged. Molecules get exchanged. And there's this idea of a law of equivalent exchange. If you try to Google it, it's going to pop up a bunch of really cool books that have nothing to do with science. And I'm a nerd about one thing. I hate fiction books. I just don't like them. But I love stories about philosophy. Because every single culture since the beginning of time has talked about this one particular point that Jesus is bringing up today. The idea of wielding power. And sooner or later, it comes back to bite you. That everyone sooner or later will have to pay the price. I stayed up way too late last night to watch an iteration of a book, of a philosophy series. And it was a healthy reminder that I enjoy that they're trying to teach some of the same basic lessons that Jesus is teaching to the littlest of people. Because if our younger people don't understand this idea of equivalent exchange, then the idea of the meek will inherit the earth will eventually happen, but probably not in the ways we want. Because God will find balance. I assure you that. But if you pull up social media, it's all about you can be a millionaire and you can get what you want. You need to go get it and seize the day. Go take what you can. You want to know why I don't go to real estate conventions? Because they're all nuts. Because I have this interesting quandary about the acquisition of an asset. I have this crazy idea that when you purchase a property from someone, you should tell them what the property is actually worth, and that you should negotiate a fair price for that property, and that you should pay your workers a fair wage, and that when you sell the property, you should sell it at a fair price. But you want to know how to be successful in real estate? You don't tell them what the property is worth. You get somebody who's in a dire situation and you step on the wound. That's what they teach you. Find out what the pain point is, and they'll sell it even cheaper because you're solving their pain. Get the property as cheap as you can. So if the property's worth $100 and you can get it for $20, so what? And turn around and find a sucker who's willing to buy that property for $120. So the person you bought it from and the person you sold it to, no, you didn't steal money, but you took it from them. Which is why people who try to flip houses, they buy them and they're new and they don't know and they get in trouble and they buy the property too much. And the guy in the middle, he made 70 grand on a piece of paper, and they say, you do this 10 times a year, you make good money. I can't sit there because there's no way in the world I'm going to take a look in somebody's eyeballs and tell them that their property's worth $20,000 when I know it's worth $100. It won't work. You know what works? Is if everybody along the food chain, everybody, from the person who sells it, to the person who brokers it, to the person who fixes it up, to the person who buys it, all along the way, everybody benefits. That's how it works. The people who've been doing this forever, the people that fix up all the houses that have nice companies, there is a balance. Are there rules? No, there's no rules. There's no rules to any of this. But there's a law of equivalent exchange that there is a finite amount of resources. You can't just invent new resources. That if you're going to take from one party and give it to another, and you continually do that, the imbalance will get to a point that it will eventually tip back across. Every single culture, the Romans, the Babylonians, watch when the wealth goes one side of the scale too hard. Eventually, the people do revolt. The meek eventually inherit the earth. When we forget about the littlest of folks, it is a reminder that God has not. The idea of the law of equivalent exchange is that when you acquire something, when you benefit normally at the expense of someone or something else. Very rarely can we create situations of a win-win. It's hard to create a win-win. Because in order to create a win-win, you also have to have a what? Lose-lose. And people forget that part. In order to have a win-win, you also have to give up. There has to be an equivalent exchange. Win-wins require a lose-lose. There's a humility that happens when we want someone else to win. And it's hard. It's also hard when somebody's got their boot on the back of your neck, because you want to fight back. The problem is, as Jesus so reminded us, as the scriptures reminded us, Careful what you mimic. Careful what you copy. It's cheesy, but it's true. A particular pastor said, "I don't take a day off because the devil never takes a day off." And the clergy member beside him said, "Well, I think you need to find a different role model." Because it's true. And it's hard. God sees the meek, and the meek will inherit the earth. There's always a balance, and the balance will be made whole. On the journey to Easter, it is a challenge to us. Where have we created imbalance? Where have we asked others to pay a price where we have benefited? Where can we be a part of not just a win-win, but a lose-lose? Let us pray.